Hello and welcome to My Cyber Why. This is the video cast where we talk to people from around the world about the amazing jobs they're doing to help keep us safe. So you hear a lot about the bad guys. This is our chance to get to know the good guys better and what makes them get up every morning and what their cyber why is. So today we're very excited to welcome Craig Jones, who is the Director for Cybersecurity at INTERPOL. Welcome, Craig.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Doing well. And let's just get started off. So your morning, because you're in Singapore, right? It's our evening here in the US. Not that people need to know what time it is, but anyway. Let's get started off with how we always do. The first question, which is, who are you? So who is Craig Jones?
Yeah, that's sometimes a question I ask myself as well, not necessarily on a daily basis. So originally I'm from New Zealand. However, most of my working life, I've been in the United Kingdom. Previously, I've been in the Royal Navy. I was a police officer for a number of years, then fortunately got injured on duty and had to leave policing. I then came back into policing by a bit of a different route and ended up in the forensic world. However, when I was in the Navy back in, and I won't say the year because I don't want to be age checked, but I'm sure the astute among you can work that one out. I was in communications, and one of the things I was taught to do as a 16-year-old was touch type, which at the time I thought, this is what a waste of time. ASDF, JKL, the home keys. However, probably now the most useful skill I have, other than not speaking a foreign language. So I got into sort of the digital communications world at a very, very early stage. And I always had that bit of an interest. So coming back to when I went into policing, I went into the forensic world. I think they called CSIs, or it was a scenes of crime officer when I started. And I used to go to crime scenes. I used to examine the scenes, the burglary scenes, murder scenes, things like that. And I went through the normal, as some of us do, the career ladder on that side, and ended up as the forensic manager in a county force in the UK. But I also had a digital footprint as well at that time. I then went into a region, what's called a regional organised crime unit, and that was providing specialist capabilities back in probably about 2012, 13. And that's when cyber was just starting to appear within the UK. Within our section, we were asked to set up a cybercrime unit, and everybody looked around at each other. And so we say no one volunteered, and I said, well, I've got a bit of a digital background, why don't I give it a shot? And that's sort of how I fell into cyber then. So I set up one of the first teams in the United Kingdom. We had some fantastic times over about 3 years. We all learned together, we all made mistakes together, but that was great. Then I went into the National Crime Agency of the United Kingdom. As a senior manager in there, and I was running the part of the UK's program for building cyber capabilities for law enforcement. So working very closely with the government, with law enforcement and with partners, trying to understand and build out a national, regional and local model for law enforcement around how they would investigate cybercrime, how they would protect the communities. And then probably about 2 years ago, applied for a job at INTERPOL, which I didn't know much about at the time, but I'd done a bit of international work on a European project I was involved in, looking at secure federated cloud storage, about how we could store data that we pulled off criminals' devices, but then how we could federate that and share that amongst policing. So came into INTERPOL as their Director of Cybercrime just under a year ago now, based in Singapore. And I run one of the 3 global programs that INTERPOL have. So we have a counterterrorism one, an organised emerging crime one, and the cybercrime program, for which I'm responsible.
So taking it from forensics and physical crime onto the digital, and from UK into the international.
Yeah, very much, if you like, and it's a bit of a theme I'm following now, is this local to global theme, realistically, and I think that sits very well in this cyber world. It's very much, there is no local apart from where you're sat effectively in cyber, I would say. Everything else we do and touch within this area, it's global.
It brings us together. And I have a similar background story of typing too, except that when I went to school, because I was a female, they made me take typing because the assumption was I was going to be a secretary. when I graduated and needed to be able to do manual typing.
And that's not funny you to say that, but I can draw a similar analogy. When I was at school, I was in the German class learning German, and next door was the typing, and all the boys were in the German class and all the girls next door were in the typing class. And I think it was a similar sort of theory. Well, you need those skills because you're going to be a secretary. I think times have changed, thankfully.
They have, although being able to touch type is still a good skill.
I've got to say, having been taught as a 16-year-old and at the time thinking, why am I doing this? I am thankful on a daily basis, yes.
Although now they ought to probably teach thumb typing.
Or how to put your finger around in a certain way. I do enjoy the being able to talk and do the text side of it as well. Yeah,
it's true. So what do you do now every day? What's a typical? There's probably not a typical day, but what's it like to be the director of
So I think you're quite right. I'm really privileged in the job that I now have. For me, it's the best job in policing and in cyber. There is no comparable job within policing effectively. So what I get to do on a daily basis is I get to deliver a cybercrime program for 194 member countries. And what I first of all had to do when I come in is understand what have we delivered so far. So I was heavily involved in the WannaCry incident in the UK and post WannaCry and a lot of the debriefing that went on that. And I think the lesson for law enforcement out of that was the global coordination side of it. It didn't work. We weren't set up properly to deal with that level and at that speed, a global job and bring all of the law enforcement to bear on it. I think we did a fantastic job. However, like anything, you have the debriefs and you see ways that you can improve. So one of the parts I came in is to understand, what's the main role of the program, because I'm a program manager as well by trade. So it's understanding, okay, well, what's my objectives here? What am I setting out to do? And then what are the priorities? But more importantly, what are the outcomes going to be? So if you like, 194 member countries, they're my customers. And I have to deliver a service to them on behalf of INTERPOL, which is the organisation that runs that for them. So the first thing we came up with was just a simple mandate. So it starts setting the understanding within the organisation of, what's our goal? Well, we're looking to reduce the global impact of cybercrime and protect communities for a safer world. So every conversation I have, or not every conversation, because my wife does get bored when I keep quoting that to her, but every conversation I have in a work context is around that. So, it's like any organisation, it's on the wall, it's on my email, it's on the desk behind me. So when we start having those conversations, I'm saying, okay, well, are we talking about this? Is it going to help us contribute to this? So then we have a lot of contact with our member countries through working groups. So we have 5 regional working groups. I have a team that run that side of that, and that's the day-to-day contact with the member countries, understanding that the cops out there that are working in the cyber crime area, what are the challenges they're facing? How can we help coordinate the activities? So that then turns into, how do we understand the threat? So really important piece for us is understanding what that threat picture looks like from cybercrime. It's a really hard one at times because it's so big. And it's almost like, where do you start? Which bit do you start? You can try and do it all at once and you'll fail, basically. So let's start picking out the really important bits. And that's where you use a threat, risk and harm model. So understanding the threat, what are the risks that poses, but also what's the harm it's currently causing likely to cause. And then you work back from there effectively. So part of the program is at the moment that, we collect a lot of data and information. So we're continuously collecting data and information from law enforcement, but also we have private partners. So as an independent global organisation, we have our own rules of processing data. Now, we all know about data, but our rules are pretty rigid, actually. So we have very set ways that we are able to, ingest data, and then the way we have to store it and then process it. So that's, if you like, that organisational piece that we all do. But what we've done from that is we've been able to bring in, under our rules of processing data, a way that we can partner with organisations, and we can bring data and information in from threat intelligence companies, for example. So we have a number of companies we can bring that data in. Now, when we bring the data in, it's all very well collecting the data and everywhere, but we need to analyze and evaluate it, and then we've got to add value to it, because we can bring all this data in. What does that mean? And then by bringing it in, analyzing it, looking at trends, patterns, we can disseminate it to member countries, and we do that in a number of ways. We do that over the phone to them. We share that in a cyber activity report, a CAR as it's referred to, or even a purple notice. Now, Interpol's really famous for its red notices. I suspect most people will be aware of Interpol, but also red notices. That's the sort of arrest side of things, and warrants. That's a cop term, I suppose, the warrant side, a warrant of arrest. But again, that's what connects the organisation, and that's what sort of underpins a lot of our work. But we also have purple notices, and that's for us to inform policing about new MOs, new trends that are going on. And we use those now in the cybercrime area as well. In fact, we've just sent out one recently, as you know, I'm sat here at the moment in Singapore. We're under the COVID-19 situation that we're all going through. And we noticed there was a trend. Now, we're not saying it was linked specifically to COVID-19, but we were noticing there was more targeted ransomware attacks against medical institutions and hospitals. Now, I'm not making that specific link because I don't have the underlying evidence to actually say, yeah, that's definitely what they're doing. But what we want to do was raise that awareness amongst policing and communities that this was going on. And we sent out some simple advice. So that's another way of us sharing. And then the third part then is, trying with the member countries to coordinate operations. So how do we do operations against cybercrime? Now, at the moment, we run that through projects. So in the ASEAN region here, we have 10 member countries together. It's funded by a donor. It's organised in Singapore by the Ministry of Home Affairs, their international side, and it's run and delivered by Interpol. And that's where we've got 10 members together. We've done some capability building first of all, and if we've got time, we'll go into capability and capacity, because that's a personal thing of mine, but we'll leave that for the moment. So we've helped them build some capability. Now we're giving them operations to run. So we're giving them the data and information, the cyber intelligence, and we're getting them to run operations. And that's a model, certainly over the next 3 years whilst I'm here, is I want to run that out. Your cat's just jumped up. We want to run that out across the world. So we want to do those operations in Africa, Middle East, North Africa, Europe, America and Asia. So that's a model we're looking to roll out. And then the last part is building capabilities. So understanding how we can help law enforcement build those capabilities that they need in order to combat cybercrime. So that's the sort of one of the jobs I do. My other job is such as this, is coming out, letting people know what Interpol's about. As a global organisation, what's its mission? Connecting policing for a safer world. That's what it's been doing since about 1917, 18 when it started. It's been running for a very, very long time now, effectively.
Yeah, and it's good. People hear about Interpol, but I don't think they know what Interpol does. So I think it's great. So thank you for sharing that. It sounds like you do a lot. So you must get exhausted. I know you travel a lot because I've seen you in many parts of the world. Why do you do it? What is it that gets you up every morning? How do you find the energy to do all this?
So I think it's like a journey, isn't it? Any career, it's a journey. I started off working at a local level and enjoyed doing the local policing. So putting the hat on, walking down the street and connecting with the community. And that might sound a bit cheesy, but actually that's true. That's why a cop does what a cop does. They want to go out, they want to look after the community, but they're interacting with the community. They're having those conversations with the community, face-to-face conversations. Crime now has moved. It's moved into this realm area where police, we're not comfortable policing this area. It's not an area we're used to putting our hats on and walking down the street in. So as I've come through on the cyber side, on the regional side, first of all, then the national side of the UK, this was a challenge we're always putting to ourselves. How do we get people to work in this environment in policing? How do I get a cop to come in and work in the cybercrime unit? Because when I set my first team up, it was really simple. None of us were experts in cyber, none of us at all. And what we did, we brought investigators, we brought digital forensics, we brought researchers, analysts into the room. So we got everybody into the room together and said, look, this is the problem. This is what the area we're going to work in. How do we do it? One of our first jobs we had in the regions, for example, was the Lizard Squad attack over Christmas on the PlayStation. And I remember I was in Scotland visiting family. My boss was in Cornwall on holiday. The team were down in the south of the country. I'm having to stand outside to make phone calls. And it really, at that stage, you're thinking, hang on, this isn't like me picking up the phone and saying, yeah, I'll be there in 15 minutes because you're going to a forensic scene. You're trying to do that coordination bit. And then trying to do that in an international context for policing as well is massively challenging. It's really, really tough. So again, I suppose I've got not an agenda, but there is this piece around how can we do this better? And it comes back to the mandate is reducing the global impact of cybercrime. So I'm not saying we're going to stop it. We've got to reduce it. That's the first aim for us. It's global. It's cybercrime. That means cybercrime can mean different things. But then that end bit is protecting communities for a safer world. So there's no difference now from when I first put my hat on. I'm just doing on a slightly bigger scale. But also the community, and this is the important part for me, is the community now where I'm going to get my data and information, my intel from, is online, is virtual. And that's where I really need to make those connections about, what are they seeing? So, at the moment we're seeing there's a lot of talk about the cybercrime in the COVID-19 space at the moment. So we're now standing up our response side to this. I'm doing a few long hours at the moment. We've got a call probably in about 25 minutes time with the team. I'm pulling people off projects. I'm pulling people into our cybercrime fusion centre, start saying, right, what are we looking at here? Because effectively what the criminals are doing at the moment, they're looking at new opportunities. So if you like, that the crime types are still the same. Cybercrime is still the same. There's no new techniques coming out there. What's happening is, this organised crime groups are looking and saying, here's an opportunity, threat, an opportunity, and they're looking at the opportunity side. They're very agile. They're quick. We know how quick it is just to go online, do a quick search, and you can find, all sorts of tools on there that will help you commit crime. You don't need to go out now and, break into a house or a car. So that is going on at the moment. We're also seeing this massive rise now in people either working online or going online. Yeah. And that is, just exploded, in the last 4-6 weeks, and that's going to continue. So likewise, then the cyber criminals will look at that side of it as well. And when we do all come out at the end of this, we're going to change our working practices. We're not going to do as much traveling. We're going to do more of these conference calls. We're going to do more of our work online, because all of a sudden business will be saying, actually, we know we need to look at our business models. So that potentially is going to happen on that side. The criminals, then, we've got a greater attack surface for them. Right. With a lot of vulnerabilities in it, because, whilst these fantastic tools to use, we are vulnerable at times on there, so that's to develop. I think at this moment in time for me, I'm looking now to 3 to 5 years thinking, okay, well, how can I build the capabilities that we need here at Interpol, but also supporting law enforcement globally around that challenge of protecting the communities.
Yeah, and in the future, as we use the technology more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're a police person at heart. You want to protect. Yeah. It makes me think of this. I don't know if you've read this series called The Last Policeman.
No.
I think Ben Winters is it's an apocalyptic book, but the character, even when the world is going, and I think it's because a meteor is going to hit the world. But as everybody's basically not doing their jobs anymore, he continues to be a policeman because that's just who he is. So, yeah. Okay. So the last question is, what would you like people to know or to do? How would you like to get people engaged? If you could give people, a piece of advice.
So I think, getting people engaged, there's so many different channels now for getting messages out there, passing information. A lot of the conferences I go and speak at, a lot of the time I'm speaking to the converted. So again, it's for me, my message is I want policing really to get into the communities properly. And it's how does policing interact with those communities online? And I think that's the challenge for us in policing is, our comfort zone is walking down the street and speaking to people or picking up the phone. That's our comfort zone. So I think that the message for me is on the policing front, first of all, is, really looking ahead now around, the crime has shifted. We haven't, and this is then the sort of plea to the public and people is, if you're a victim of cybercrime, report it to police. Because if it's not reported to police, we don't see that as a problem. So for me, when I'm going for funding and things like that, because we're the same as a lot of businesses, I need to be able to show the value for money on this and say, look, if there is a problem, we need to address that problem, and we will do it through X, Y, and Z. And a lot of the sort of national, and I knew some of the UK reporting, they talk about, over 50% of crime now being online. Well, that's not in policing terms playing out in the resourcing that's put into policing. So I think we all feel fairly comforted when we see a police officer in the neighbourhood. In fact, I had some officers parked out here the other night where I am eating their McDonald's, and I went and had a chat with them, and I said, yeah, it's great to see you. I feel great. Yeah. But again, when you look at the sort of the other normal crime types, they're going down. So, if the crime is shifting downwards, or certain crime types are shifting downwards, the other crime types are going up. But actually, then policing needs to sort of change that level of investment in there. It will come. I mean, what's happened is, we're on this. I've got into this 2012, 2013, so 8 or 9 years. I've been in police nearly 30 years. We will shift, but it will take time. And that's my sort of message is really to the policing side of this is, how do we invest in this properly in our staff as well? That's one of the big points on this. But also in sort of countries as well, how do we raise that profile within countries to bring it to the forefront? I mean, we are living in extraordinary times at the moment, of course, as well. And there's a lot of other things we need to concentrate at the moment. But yeah, I think for me that underlying piece is around that policing message, which I would say as a law enforcement guy, wouldn't I?
Yeah, well, but it's a great point. As the criminals are moving online, law enforcement needs to move online with it, and our engagement with law enforcement. You're right; it's a very different from. I see our local police going up and down the house, the road, and I feel like that's great. But they're going to be engaging with us online too, and doing the similar, protecting us, and Interpol helping to protect us.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Thank you very much. I know you have to run to another meeting, but I've
got time. I've got time to make another coffee, so I'll be okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we did. Okay, so that's good. As long as you get more coffee. Well, again, thank you, Craig. This has been a great conversation. I'm so grateful for your time.
No, you're more welcome. As I say, we've met a few times now, and it's always as well seeing you speaking as well. I find very inspiring. So it's great to have these sort of conversations, albeit it's recorded and a few people might be watching it.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody who tuned in. This has been My Cyber Why.